to Redirected. My name is Andrew East, and this is a show down and talk with celebrities, athletes, entrepreneurs, really anybody who has experienced a significant pivot or change in life. I call these changes redirections, and I think when we take a step back, we realize that all of us go through large changes, and oftentimes it's how we make it through that pivotal moment that defines what's next for us. And so after having experienced a lot of these big changes in my own personal life, I wanted to sit down with people who have made it through these changes well, whether that's in their career, personal life, it could be whatever it is, in order to learn for myself, but then also share those learnings with you. And so today's an episode that I'm really looking forward to, and I have been for a while. We sit down and talk with Nate Boyer, who is a Green Beret. He signed with an NFL team. He's got so many interesting aspects about him. He does a ton of charity work, which I really respect about him. But Nate and I actually met about 5 years ago at a college football award ceremony, and him and I played the same position in college, funny enough. He played at the University of Texas and I played at Vanderbilt. And then we both ended up signing free agency contracts, him with the Seattle Seahawks and me with the Kansas City Chiefs. If you want to find out more about Nate and the things that he's doing, you can find that information in the show notes down below. But Nate tells a story about how he went from floundering in life to ultimately signing up to serve in the Green Berets, to ultimately starting his college football career much later than normal, and then how that led him into the NFL. And he's got so many interesting stories to tell. I think you guys will like it. Before we jump in, if you guys haven't, please give this show a rating and subscribe to it on whatever platform you're listening. And let's go ahead and jump into this one with Nate Boyer. All right, Nate, I just kind of want to, I like to start from the beginning just so people get an understanding of how you grew up and kind of what culture you come from. If you could just tell us about your upbringing. Doesn't have to be long-winded, but I would love to hear about, what it was like for you growing up.
Yeah, I actually was born in Tennessee in Oak Ridge. I don't know if you've been there before, but it's right next to Knoxville. And my mom was working at Oak Ridge National Lab at the time, and my dad was getting his veterinary degree at University of Tennessee, the other UT. And so when I was very young, we moved to the Bay Area. My dad started working at Golden Gate Fields, which is a horse racing track up in Berkeley. He literally retired 2 days ago, which is crazy.
Yeah, congrats, Mr. Boyer.
Thanks. Well, as a reward, he's about to get locked down in the Bay, and so they escaped to Oregon. So now they're on their retirement honeymoon, I guess, up here in Oregon. So, but anyway, so he worked there for almost 40 years, and that's where I grew up. I grew up in a town called El Cerrito until I was about 9. And then we moved to Colorado for a few years and then back to the Bay Area where I went through high school. Played a lot of sports growing up, played everything pretty much but football and regretted that because it was my favorite sport to watch. But when I was real young, I just, it didn't work out for me to play. And then as I got older, I didn't have a lot of, I was a big dreamer, but I didn't have a lot of self-confidence in my abilities. You know what I mean? So because of that, I didn't work very hard at it. I would, screw around shooting hoops or whatever, but with not like a good practice plan to improve. And I remember being like 13 and thinking maybe I should just play football, like give it a shot. But then, that worry of like, well, what if I don't make the team or I ride the bench? Like that'll be embarrassing, and all the stupid stuff that we get in our own way when we're young. And so I didn't play, and went through high school not doing that, and wasn't really ready to go to college after high school. So I moved down to Southern California and started working on a fishing boat first, and kind of dropped out of firefighting school. Wow. Yeah. And then just sort of floundered for a while, really, until 9/11 happened.
This begins an amazing story when 9/11 happened for you. You were how old?
I was 20.
20 years old. As you say, you're kind of floundering, it seems like, didn't really have a clear purpose and direction. But then when this happened, walk us through what happened next.
Yeah. So, I thought about joining the military right away. Not a lot of people that I knew, but I saw that people were doing that, and it was inspiring just to see people leave jobs on, Wall Street or wherever, to sign up. And But I didn't do it right away because I just wasn't sure what I would do in the military, and I didn't really know what was going on. So what I started doing first was traveling and kind of exploring the world. So I would save my money up, working odd jobs, and then I would just go. Um, I'd go to Europe and backpack around, or Mexico and Central America, and eventually, a couple of years after 9/11, I wound up going to the Darfur in Sudan. So this was a place, it's on the border of Chad and Sudan in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's in the midst of a genocide at this time. There'd been 300,000 people that had been murdered. There's refugee camps everywhere, and they're understaffed at these places. And this other travel that I'd done and exploring, like, it was educational in a lot of ways, but I didn't really have a purpose behind it, serving others anyway. You know what I mean? And so when I got to this decision to go to the Darfur, I started calling all these NGOs like Doctors Without Borders and Child Fund and Catholic Relief Services and all these groups. And they were appreciative of me reaching out, but they just said, look, it's just not that simple. There's too much red tape. You don't have a college degree. We don't really know what you would do. So you can't help us. And I was like, I'll do anything. Like, I don't need to do anything high level. I just want to help. And I just kept getting, I appreciate it, but sorry. And I was like, screw that. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to fly myself over there. And so I went to the travel agent, a AAA travel agency. We used to do that back in the day before the interwebs dominated society. And I bought a ticket to fly over there. And I just flew out there, spent a couple of months, and kind of BS'd my way onto a UN flight and weaseled my way into the refugee camps and started volunteering and helping out. And they ended up utilizing me. And it completely changed my life forever. It changed me because of the level of gratitude these people had, just to get a glass of clean water, a meal, basic shelter, a soccer ball for like a village full of kids. One ball is like everything. You know what I mean? That was really cool because I grew up not always with a lot, but with very, very loving parents, and like in a country where you can chase your dreams, you could be anything. You know what I mean? I had all these things that I sort of took for granted, as a lot of us do. It's not our fault. It's just we're lucky to be born here, And I developed this gratitude for people like that, and they were so gracious. They wouldn't take a thing from me. I'd try to give them some of my snacks or like money, and they would just like, the kids would take the snacks, but like all the adults, everyone was like, no, that's just like, it's our culture. Like, we're just, we just appreciate you. And yeah, so like I also developed like this patriotism, sort of this appreciation for what I came from, because they all wanted to hear about America. They all wanted to hear about this great place. And it is a great place, but like for me, I was like, it's all right, I guess. Like, there's cool stuff and blah, blah, blah. But not really thinking of it, like taking it into perspective, what they have or don't have. I mean, that place, it's amazing. They would kill to come over here and drive Uber or whatever. You know what I mean? And so the last week I was there, I actually got malaria, and it was pretty bad. Like, I was down for about 3 days. This family took me into their compound, like nursed me back to health. They put me in this little room that had a radio and a Bob Marley tape in the radio, right? So they would like bring me water, I was sweating bullets and freezing cold at the same time. And like, I couldn't keep any food down. It was just bad. And so I'm like just trying to get through it. And I listened to Bob Marley tape like 3 times on each side, and I was sick of Bob Marley. So I love Bob Marley, but that was enough. And then, so I started flipping through the radio stations, and the only channel that came in was the BBC News. And it was like literally during the Second Battle of Fallujah, which was this like one of the biggest battles in the war. And I'm listening to these Marines, going in and their heroism and fighting for these these people that, have so much different cultures and customs, and all of that was sort of put aside. And I just, developed even more pride for my country, and wanted to continue to serve in some way. And so I kind of knew at that moment that the military was going to be the next step.
And what year was that?
That was in 2004.
Bro, I'm just sitting here trying to figure out how you make decisions, because it seems like you make pretty high stake decisions naturally, and it comes easily to you, and like you're not afraid to jump into something like that, you know?
I wouldn't say it comes easily though, because I think in a lot of these circumstances, maybe football aside, but these other circumstances, it was like I just I didn't like myself very much, to be honest. You know what I mean? I didn't feel like I did anything that mattered until these opportunities sort of presented themselves. And then it was like I felt like I've been selfish my whole life, and like, I mean, I partied a lot, and it was just all about, whatever feels good right now. It wasn't about like it wasn't about anybody else really either. And then it was a lot of poor me stuff, feeling sorry for myself because things aren't going a certain way. And it's like, dude, you're not working towards something. You're not like putting the time in necessary. You're not being of service to others. You're just not generally being a good person. Like, of course, things aren't going to come your way. They shouldn't. If they do, and it happens for some people, and it really frustrates us when we see that, you know what I mean? But like, I was one of those people, so I didn't deserve any of that stuff. And the reality is, like, when I finally, I can't put a finger on what the switch was that got me out of that. I think it's because I felt like I was heading towards a pretty bad place, and I didn't want to let my family down. I didn't want to let my parents down, because they put so much into us, me and my brother and sister, and they worked so hard until 2 days ago for us, forever. And it's like, it's kind of a slap in the face if like I'm just off doing whatever Nate wants to do. And so anyway, I think a lot of it was guilt and like kind of making up for that. But also, once you finally feel that purpose and service to others, it's very addictive, and you finally feel that self-worth. You know what I mean? When it's no longer about you, it really becomes about you feeling whole, at least in a sense. And I just got addicted to that feeling. And it's also like you feel like you're a part of something bigger than you for the first time, and that's a good thing.
It's I think that was very well said. It's so interesting to see you now, who you've had a decorated career serving. You played NFL football, you played collegiate football at one of the top schools, and it's like, oh, I just imagine this very disciplined, dedicated to a cause guy who's probably been like that his whole life, but it doesn't sound like that's the story. And I think that your story is incredibly inspirational, in the sense that, like, whether you're a hooligan and you're out partying all the time and you don't have a purpose and you don't feel like you're contributing in any way, or even me, like, now I got a freaking daughter, and there's still parts about me that I'm like, man, I need to be more disciplined in this area. And like, there's always something to work on. But like, your story is, you realize what that was, and it seems like it was a pretty quick transition from you realizing that to you actually doing something to change that. Did you know that what you were embarking on was going to lead down this journey of you ultimately, serving at the highest level? And I can say you're a Green Beret, right? That's not a private information. Okay, yes. I don't want to compromise national intelligence, but
I thought about wearing it, but it was a bit much.
That'd have been great. It's probably better off you didn't, but it's not. It doesn't seem like you knew that was going to be the end goal or end result. You just took the first step that made sense with your new goal that you had, which was being more selfless and serving in whatever way you could. Is that a fair way to put that?
Yeah. Well, honestly, so when I got back to the States, I thought, okay, Marines, because I just had heard about these guys in Fallujah. So I went to the Marine Corps recruiter, and maybe it's the recruiter's fault. I don't know. I just didn't get the best vibe, and something about it. I was like, I don't know, man. Now I'm like second guessing myself. And like across the street is like the Army recruiting office, and so I go over there, kind of check things out. The guy's trying to sell me on, um, I don't remember what the job was, doing some kind of intel job. It's just something about it just didn't. I don't know. They got to make quotas. Like I get it. He was trying to funnel me down a direction because they don't want you to fail. And I didn't really know what a Green Beret was. I knew what an Army Ranger was, but a Green Beret, I kind of just had a misconception. I think because of like Rambo's a Green Beret, and the A Team, they're Green Berets. And so I sort of thought it was like this just vigilante mercenary type thing, and so I left, and I continued to think about it, and I actually went to get my oil changed. And randomly, there was another magazine. This time, it wasn't a magazine about the Sudan. It was about special forces, and it had like this. I don't remember what magazine it was even, but it had like these guys like fast roping out of a helicopter, And it's reading about it said on the cover something about this new contract for special forces. So I read the article, and essentially what was happening was, because they were trying to bolster the Special Forces unit. The Green Beret is a slang term for Army Special Forces. Because they were trying to bolster that unit, they were bringing in people off the street if you met certain requirements. You had to be a certain, I think you had to be, at the time, I think you had to be 21. You had to have some college, or at least all these things were encouraged. Then you had to like take all these tests, like a psych eval, language aptitude test, obviously the ASVAB test, and like a physical test. And you have to score a certain level. If you pass all that, you can get this contract to come in off the street. It's called the 18 X-ray contract. And you go to basic training and airborne school, and then you go to a pre-special forces selection course, and then you go to selection with the rest of the Army guys that apply. And usually, guys have been in for several years with, at that time, at least a deployment or two under their belt. And so odds weren't in your favor, but they also were like, they were looking for people with different backgrounds, different experiences. And so that was appealing. And then also, once I read about the motto was De Oppresso Libera, which means it's Latin for to free the oppressed. That really spoke to me, I think, just because of the time I'd spent just a couple weeks before in Darfur. And I just like made the decision right there. I was like, that's what I'm doing. That's it. And so I went back into the Army office. I told them I want this contract and nothing else. And I got it. And then, not long after, I was off in basic training.
Are you one to believe in destiny? It sounded like there's a sequence of events where you're like, well, all these signals keep popping up. Maybe I should listen to them. Is that your mindset? Or?
I don't know if I believe in at a level, because I don't like the idea of like feeling like we don't have some control. You know what I mean? Like we don't have, like we have to make choices. We still have to make choices. You know what I mean? Like I don't think it was like I had no choice, because I look at that both ways. And I think about, this is a very dark thing to say, but there's a big suicide epidemic in the veteran community, right? And so if I say I believe fully in this destiny, then I feel like I'm saying those people were destined to take their own lives. You know what I mean? And I don't believe, I think all those people are like, there was something that could have been done differently from somebody somewhere down the line. A lot of people, probably not one person, that could change that trajectory. Because if you don't believe that's possible, then what are you even trying to do? If you think, this is just going to happen. So in the same way as that, like I'm a big believer in signs and like, something pushing you in a direction, and whether that, if you're a religious person, whether that's God, whether that's destiny, fate, whatever you want to call it, like the universe, there's something very alive in the universe. And I'm a big proponent of like, whatever you believe in, hopefully it's a good thing. But, listen to the universe and look out for those signs, because I think they do matter. So in a sense that is an element of destiny, I think. Because I try to continue to do that today, and I like to be open to a lot of things. And if it feels right, I mean, the one thing about the military thing that's tough is like you make that decision, it's a 5-year commitment or a 4-year commitment or whatever. It's not like, well, I'll just go do it, and if I don't like it, I'll quit. Like, you can't really do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was a little
Right.
more commitment to that, but it just at the time too, like we were going to Iraq. We'd already been in Afghanistan. The surge was happening, and I didn't really know what else. Like I wasn't at the time. I wasn't thinking. Like, there's nothing else I could really imagine doing that would make sense. I didn't feel super happy back here in the States, so I knew that was sort of what made the most sense, but also something that I actually was passionate about.
And so you ended up serving for 5 years, is that right?
Yeah, I did 5 years active duty, and then after I got out and went to college, I actually went into the National Guard in Texas, and so I did 4 more years there, and actually went back overseas a couple of times while I was in school. I don't know if you know about that, but we'll get to it.
Gee, yeah, we'll get to it. All right, so, well, not to cut out what you learned from 2010 onward serving, but what were the biggest lessons that while you were active duty Green Beret that you learned?
Man, I learned to, um, well, like while you have incredible, leaders and teammates, um, to also like trust yourself. You know what I mean? Trust your instincts for the most part. I mean, there's an element of like, yes, you have to follow orders, but being in the special forces, being a Green Beret, you have to be very self-sufficient as well. You know what I mean? So that was a big thing, like trusting myself, making a decision, and just going for it. Also, like when you train at a very high level with people, on your left and right, that sometimes you don't get along with, sometimes you don't even like, you can still learn to love them and trust them, that like they're going to do their job and you're going to do your job. I mean, I'm sure you experience that in football. Like we all have people that you just can't stand them. You know what I mean? It's oil and water. But when you get out there on the field, if you guys have practiced hard together, trained together, during the game, I feel like during those 3 hours, all that stuff kind of goes aside. You don't really care. You know what I mean? You pull for that guy. He's pulling for you. He would do anything on the good teams anyway. He would do anything to make sure that he's not going to let you down and you're successful. It's the same thing in the military, in a combat situation, or just in a training situation. And then I think the last thing I really learned to do was listen, and try to understand people that are very different than me. Because in the special forces, you're working with, at least at this time, we were working with Iraqis and Afghans every day, and we're training them. We're listening to their needs, what they want. We're also fighting alongside them, and they sort of become your brothers in arms as well. And it's tough to like get past differences sometimes. I mean, we see that a lot in our country today. People don't even want to listen to one another, but it's okay. Like I can disagree with somebody. I can have a totally different concept of what right looks like. And there can even be things about those people and the customs that I just adamantly disagree with and think are even bad. And I can still work with them, and I can still appreciate them for the good things and love them, and do what I can to maybe try to help them if they have questions as far as like what's important to me and what's important to us. But also like understand that like this is where they were born. If I was born here, I would probably believe these same things. You know what I mean? I would have these same customs and cultures. I would have these same challenges, and I need to continue to try to walk in their shoes as much as possible and understand where they're coming from. Because at the end of the day, as messed up as it sounds, like when I think about these situations in Iraq and Afghanistan with like suicide bombers, right? A lot of times it's very, very, it's people with nothing. It's people that have families. They have a lot of people to take care of. The working wage in Afghanistan when I was there was like $20 a month for like a blue collar person. It's like low. If somebody came to your door and said, you know, I'm going to give you $10,000. You'll be able to take care of your family, you know, and if that person can convince you that this is what God wants you to do anyway, you know what I mean? And when you die, you're going to go to heaven and everything will be great and you'll be an honorable man. And you are someone that grew up there. You've got a third grade education, you know, at best. You've learned to listen to your leaders at all costs, like these, you know, religious clerics or whoever that sometimes don't have the, um, they're not thinking about what's best for their people. They're pushing an agenda. All these things, like, if I was in that situation, maybe I would do that. I hate, you know, I would hope that I wouldn't, but like, it's just a tough one, you know? And so when you put all those factors in, like, it helps you understand, and then you can try to correct those situations and like further educate as to why this is not a good thing. But
Okay, so let me ask you, is there something that interferes with your happiness or is preventing you from achieving your goals? Well, BetterHelp Online Counseling is there for you. You can connect with your professional counselor in a safe and private online environment. It is very convenient, and you can now get help on your own time and at your own pace. You can schedule secure video or phone sessions, plus chat and text with your therapist whenever and wherever you want. They have licensed professional counselors who are specialized in depression, stress, anxiety, relationships, sleeping, trauma, anger, family conflicts, grief, self-esteem, and so much more. Anything you share is confidential, and if you're not happy with your counselor for any reason, you can request a new one at any time with no additional charge. They have over 3,000 U.S. licensed therapists across all 50 states, available worldwide, and you can start communicating in under 24 hours. It is truly counseling 2.0. Best of all, it's a truly affordable option. Redirect listeners can get 10% off your first with discount code REDIRECTED. So why not get started today? Go to betterhelp.com/redirected and simply fill out a questionnaire to help them assess your needs and get matched with a counselor that you'll love. That's betterhelp.com/redirected. Man, and that's, I think, what you just described, your willingness to listen and to understand and to have, I mean, you've continued to do that not only while you're serving, but also later on. And I think that's what, like, you just have such an amazing impact in that sense. And that's why I'm such a big fan personally of you, because you've displayed that. And we'll revisit another major event that's happened to you in a little bit. But I'm just really impressed with your willingness to do that and your ability to as well. But we'll revisit in a little bit. I would love to hear, once you're done with your 5-year contract serving with the Green Berets, what happens next?
yeah, so I'll back up a little bit. So I have like a year left on my contract and I'm in Iraq, right? And I had the opportunity to re-enlist at that time. And part of me wanted to, because things were still going on, war was still going on, but in Iraq, things were starting to slow down. It kind of looked or felt like at the time, maybe we were going to, you know, move forward out of this global war on terror. And it's not that simple. It's so hard because like the enemy is just not, it's not like you're fighting a country. You know what I mean? There's no surrender. I mean, it's just a different situation. Anyway, so I was about to turn 29, and I made the decision to get out and finally go to college. I felt ready for the first time. So I started exploring options of where to go. I mean, Vanderbilt was on my list. I'm not going to lie.
Let's go Doors.
I had a few different schools. I grew up a big Notre Dame fan because I was in the Bay Area. I was a Niner fan, and Joe Montana went to Notre Dame, and Tim Brown played for the Raiders. He went to Notre Dame, and then Rocket Ismail. I had all these legends when I was a kid, so I just became a Notre Dame fan. So that was on my list, but I didn't want to move to South Bend. I wanted to go to a place, being an older student, like a bigger city. So like Vanderbilt was on the list. going back to California was an option, and then University of Texas in Austin. I love Austin. It's a great town. It's very similar to Nashville, actually. And that was where I ended up going. It was the only place I applied. I'd heard stories of Mac Brown, doing a USO tour and like making the helicopter wait while he shakes everybody's hand before he goes back. And you see that Longhorn logo everywhere, especially in the military. I feel like because there's a lot of, in the Army especially, there's a lot of soldiers from Texas, and there's a lot of Army bases in Texas. And so it just seemed like the Army's team, aside from the Army. So that was just, I had my sights set on that. And also I wanted to make up for that regret, of not playing football, because it still bothered me even at 29. And granted, I know that's like a big school and a very tough school to play at, but
Yeah, bro.
but I was like, well, I'll just try out for the team. If I don't make it, I mean, life goes on. It's all good. At this point, like, I'm okay with failure. You know what I mean? And so I did, and I started training for it while I was in Iraq. And then I came back to the States. I was stationed in Colorado Springs at the time, and I'd go down to the National Strength and Conditioning Association, which is kind of connected to like the Olympic Training Center down there. And I would train there. Like, they let some of the special forces guys come down there and train. So I was training there. I met a guy named Rob Rogers, who was a strength coach. He coached at Missouri and Baylor and USC and all these places. So he started working with me, and I just kind of, went all in on that. And then I had one more trip to Israel before, like a quick, like two month, it wasn't like a deployment in the sense of like combat. We were working with the Israeli Special Forces and more of a training mission. And then I went to Austin right after that. Like, I got out of the Army on January 8th. January 9th was my birthday. January 10th, I actually drove to Austin on my birthday. I think January 10th was the first day of school. And then January 11th was the first day of like the spring tryouts. And I just went for it. And it was, luckily it was all just conditioning at first, the first cuts, because I didn't really know how to play football. But but I was in good condition, I could go forever. So I blew away all the other walk-ons in that regard, just because I'd spent all that time in the Army. And wasn't necessarily super strong or fast, like, 40-yard dash wise. But if we ran, 20 100s, by the 10th one, I was beating everybody on every one, because I'm pretty much going the same speed on every one. So I made the team. And that first year, I was just on the scout team, kind of learning the game. I played safety.
At the University of Texas.
Yeah. The University of Texas.
That
Yeah.
is nuts.
It was cool. And the cool part about it, that first year of, not playing, is like, I dressed for home games. I got to lead the team out of the tunnel with the American flag before every game, because I'd served in the military. So like, that was really cool. And then on Veterans Day, we're playing Texas Tech, and we're blowing them out. And so it's on Veterans Day. So the DB coach goes up to Mac, and he's like, "Hey, we got to put Boyer in. We got to put him in." Like, all right. So he's like, "Let him run down on kickoff." I'd done it in practice a few times, but like, not really. So I go out there, I'm like L4, don't even really know what I'm doing. I just know I'm going down. I'm like, well, I'm just going to try to, run over somebody or bust some kind of wedge or something. I run down there. I get double teamed, of course. I'm like, dude, I'm like the littlest guy out here. Why are you doubling me? And so I get like stood up by these guys. And one of them broke off to block somebody else. And so I'm there with this big dude. I looked him up later. He was a freshman, so I don't feel as cool about it. But he's this big tight end. And I kind of felt his balance, felt him get off balance. And I like threw him down over my shoulder. I'm like 30 yards from the tackle, but the bench went nuts, and so like we come off the field, and it was pretty cool. But I like caught the bug. I was like, all right, I got to find a way to get on the field. And that's when that year during bowl practices is when I decided to start long snapping, because the starter was graduating. he was a senior. And so I started messing with it, man. I started Googling, watching YouTube videos. I would snap 100 balls a day, like in the gym. I'd wait till like it was late. The strength coach let me stay late, and I would just kind of do it in the corner into some pads. And I was terrible for 2 months, probably. Like couldn't throw a spiral. Didn't have the technique was bad. But I would like, set a camera up. I'd like video myself a little bit, and then go watch and compare to some of these guys that have been doing it for years. And then that summer, because I was in the National Guard, I went back overseas. And so when I went to I went to Afghanistan between the last couple of years I was playing. And so I built a little target out of plywood, and I was just snapping footballs into the target whenever, in between missions.
Dude, this story is such a cool example of flexibility, I feel like, or rolling with the punches. Like, look, you just got done serving, now you walk on, like flexibility and opportunism, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with words that summarize like the lessons that are takeaways from this. Strategic awareness for you to know Mac Brown's story, that he's been on USO tours, that you might like have some connection there. And then the long snapping, like choosing that as the position that, hey, you know what, there's a real opportunity here that you could learn. And then the perseverance and humility also. I cannot imagine, Nate, being a 29-year-old walking on to a team of what I imagine, if it's like any other college football locker room, is like, pretty, I don't want to say arrogant because they're not bad guys, but it's like, look, these guys, there's like some of the most successful athletes out there, right? And you're this 29-year-old dude. And the humility that takes is really impressive,
Yeah.
I appreciate it, man. I mean, it was, I'm a kid at heart too, though. Like I'm immature in a lot of ways, so I fit right in a lot of ways. So, I mean, some parts of us stopped growing up at 19. Let's just be real, So, no, I had a great man, and most of the people I was hanging out with in college were my teammates. Even though I was 10 years older than a lot of them. I had my other friends in town there in Austin, but that was just, those are the guys I went to battle with. I know it's not combat, it's very different, but like it is the same in the sense of the lockerhood, that brotherhood, locker room, the brotherhood, the camaraderie. Like we talked about earlier, doing your job so that the guy on your left and right is successful. I mean, all that stuff, like it builds bonds, and the age stuff kind of goes out the window. I think it was funny to come back every summer from overseas, and the new freshmen that are there, the rest of the team would be like telling them stories about like how, oh man, he's crazy. Like, don't mess with him. Like, just not true at all, because I'm just not like that. But I would definitely spend a couple weeks playing a character when I got back, just to mess with the new guys a bit. But no, it was, and I liked the going back and forth, like the transition from Afghanistan to Austin. I liked it, man, because it was like, it was a break from both. So in the summers in Austin, it's super humid. You're out there you're not, you're going to classes, but Austin kind of slows down a bit. And, I wanted to get away from college, get away from all that. And I like deploying, as weird as that sounds. I like going back over there. And so, but also knowing that I'm only going for about 3.5 months versus my first deployment was about 9.5 months. It's very different, so it's like you're over there, you got an important job to do, you have a mission, you're very structured. I get away from all the temptations that Austin has too, and everything like that. And I kind of just refocus my life and figure out, not just football wise, but like other stuff, like what I want to, what's the plan for the next thing. And, but like I said, I loved being a Green Beret. I loved being a part of that. And it was a cool dichotomy, and it was a very unique college experience for sure. But I wouldn't have done it any other way. And we weren't even that good in those years as a football team, but there's no other school I would have gone to, just because of the experience in Austin and getting the opportunity to play. I came back from that trip and won the starting job and started for 3 years, and that was, considering I'd only been playing football for 2, that was crazy, but it worked out.
Let me just list off some accolades that you earned while playing. First team academic All Big 12, academic All American, Big 12 Sports Person of the Year, and the Armed Forces Merit Award. Dude, what a story!
The cheesiest one though is the Disney Spirit Award.
Oh, I didn't find that one. My bad, dude. Congrats. Hey, is that like you got some cheers or something you could throw? Pom-poms maybe, but it's great. So what did you even study while you were at UT? Do they have classes down there?
It's a good school, man. Come on. It's a great school. Yeah, I did. I studied, so undergrad, I studied kinesiology because I honestly thought I was going to get into potentially coaching or something like that. First year in, I knew I didn't want to be a coach, but I stuck with it, finished my degree in that. And then I actually got my master's degree in advertising. And so I wanted to go to film school while I was there, but it was just too much with football, with deploying, like film school. I mean, you shoot a lot of projects, and the graduate film program, they only let like 20 people in every year. And so it was already hyper competitive. And I talked to the dean and people in the communications department. They said, look, what you should do is, if you're interested, you should maybe do another degree in the comm school, and then you can take film electives, film related electives. And that's what I did. So I did advertising, which was great because I actually learned a lot about development, branding. I mean, there's still production involved in that, but there's a marketing aspect in the film and television world that I'm working in now that is essential. So if you just are taking creative classes, like that's great if you're purely a creative, if you're just a writer or you're just an actor or whatever. But if you're trying to be a producer and you want to have run a production company, which is my goal, all these things are essential as well. So that was great. So I was able to do that, and finish that degree. And then, yeah, I mean, just to get the opportunity to play in one game with the Seahawks was pretty cool too.
Freaking awesome, man. And in 2015, another pivotal moment happened. You met me in New Orleans, and but then you got picked up in free agency by the Seahawks, and you played a freaking game, dude. You did it.
Yeah, I did. I was just remember the last day of the draft. I got a call from the Rams. It was the St. Louis Rams then, and the St. Louis Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. And I had about 30 minutes to make the decision of where I wanted to go. And the strength or the special teams coach for the Rams gave me a call, but Pete Carroll gave me a call from the Seahawks, and they'd been to back-to-back Super Bowls, winning one of them. And the Rams, they're coming off, I think, a 4-12 year. It was just like, I had people telling me like, hey, dude, you're going to have a much better chance making the Rams. Like, you should do that. And I was like, yeah, but either way, I'm a long shot. I'm a huge long shot. If I don't go after the big fish, I'll regret it. Just like being a Green Beret, same kind of thing, same mentality. So that's what I did. I just said, no, I'm going to go to Seattle. Whatever happens, happens. And once again, I don't regret that decision.
And you've provided and you've earned this platform from which I feel like you've used so responsibly. I want to revisit the empathy thing that we were discussing earlier, and you had this conversation with Colin Kaepernick while the whole taking a knee thing was taking place. If you could touch on that.
Yeah. So that one game I got to play in, just like in college, I got to lead the team out of the tunnel with the American flag, which is really cool. Like, players don't usually do that. But the equipment manager came up to me before the game and said, hey, we usually have an active duty guy lead the team out, with the fire going off and the cheerleaders and everything with the flag. And he said, but, do you want to do it? It's your first game here. I didn't know it was going to be my last. And it was it was in CenturyLink Field. It's against Peyton Manning and the Broncos. It's like a big deal. And so I was like, of course. So take the flag, run out of the tunnel, and then we're on the sidelines. And in college, you're not on the field when they play the anthem. Like, we're in the locker rooms, and then they play the anthem, and then we come out. And in college, in the NFL, obviously, that's a different situation. So I'm standing on the sidelines, not even really thinking about it. And then the announcer says, "Would everybody please rise as we honor the nation by playing the national anthem?" And so I look around, we're supposed to find the tallest flag in the building, wherever you are. And so I find they have this flag way up high. I turn, face the flag, put my hand on my heart, and then the anthem starts getting sung, and I got super emotional. I start crying. So I'm bawling on the sidelines during the anthem. And afterwards, it was super cool. Like Earl Thomas and Richard Sherman and Marshawn and all these guys came up to me and gave me a hug and just were appreciative. Russell Wilson, everybody. It was really cool because I think they all kind of saw me losing it. And we play the game, move on, or whatever. Now it's a year later, literally a whole year later. I've been released, and they've got during the preseason again, and it's also during the presidential election, which is Trump versus Hillary, and this whole very divisive time. And Colin Kaepernick starts sitting on the bench and protested the anthem. And I'm a big Niner fan. I grew up a Niner fan, and that one really hurt me more than anything. It wasn't I wasn't just super offended or whatever. I was just hurt because I don't know. I just took it. I took it a certain way because of what do those symbols mean to me. You know what I mean? And a lot of people were upset, and a lot of people were also very much in support of him. And I kept getting reached out to by CNN and Fox News and whatever, Headline News and MSNBC. They're all reaching out hey, you got to weigh in on this because you were in the military and you played. Is this offensive to the military? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm first of all, I don't speak for every veteran. And second of all, I'm not going to go, no matter what, if I go on a certain station, a certain channel, I'm going to be put in that box of oh, he's a bleeding heart liberal, or, he's a gun-toting conservative or whatever, just because I went on that show. And it's I don't really feel like either. I feel like I'm in the middle on a lot of things. I have my own opinions on every issue, you know what I mean? And so I didn't do it. I said, no, I don't want to do that. And the Army Times reached out twice. And the Army Times is this little newspaper that not a lot of people read. And it's always in the bathroom on base. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. Yeah. And they hit me up and asked me to write an opinion piece. And I said, I don't want to write an op-ed. I don't want to write about why he's wrong and this is why he should do that. They wrote me back again. They said, look, we just want you to write something. You can write whatever you want. And I said, fine, I'll do it if I can write an open letter to Colin. And they said, okay. And I said, and I get to see the final edit. So I just wrote this letter, which you can still, you can find it online. If you just Google open letter to Colin Kaepernick, Nate Boyer or whatever, you'll find it. But basically I just explained my experiences, why I feel the way I feel, but also said, look, I don't know what it's like to be you and walk around in your shoes. And so, I know what you're doing is very courageous, and tough. And I look forward to the day that you're willing to stand again.
I just want to read one little paragraph that kind of touches on why because you have you who served as a Green Beret, you played in the NFL, and then him, and you're both kind of spokespersons for this cause. And you said this. You said, even though my initial reaction to your protest was one of anger, I'm trying to listen to what you're saying and why you're doing it. When I told my mom about this article, she cautioned me that the last thing our country needed right now was more hate. And as usual, she's right. And I just feel like, man, if we had more of that perspective, it's okay to have differing opinions, but I feel like we're absolutely. But where we go wrong so often is assuming that there's no room to listen to the other opinion. And so anyway, I wanted to bring that up because I think it's important, especially in the political climate we're living in right now, and there's just so much going on. Like that attitude that you had of like, look, I was initially angry, but I'm gonna put that aside and actually listen to what you're saying is just so good, dude. So thank you for sharing that.
I mean, Colin appreciated it too, and he actually ended up calling me and wanting to sit down. So we ended up meeting the next day in San Diego right before their final preseason game. Like literally 4 hours before kickoff, I met him in the hotel lobby, and we just talked about all this stuff, man. And we chatted for a couple hours before the buses left, and then he asked if there was another way he could protest that wasn't going to offend people in the military. And I was like, man, no matter what you do, people are going to be offended. Like, you can't win here. Like, I was like, of course I want you to stand, but I don't want you to stand out of obligation. I want you to stand because you want to. And through our conversation, we sort of came up with this idea of taking a knee instead alongside his teammates. I told him, I said, look, I think that's more respectful, at least. If you're not going to stand, doing something, being alongside your teammates is very important. And to me, sitting on the bench, like back away from everybody, kind of looks like you're either making it about you or that you just don't really care, And I don't think, after our conversation, I was like, I know that's not the case. So that's when he changed, that day. And I stood on the field next to him while he took a knee. And I think it was an important moment for me too, because it was like, that took some courage on my part. Even like, I knew I was going to get attacked. I knew I was going to get whatever, but I was like, hey, look, I'm standing up for the Constitution, the First Amendment, which is freedom of speech, and I'm standing up for somebody that I think is a good person. I might disagree on a lot of levels, a lot of things that he's saying, but like, that's okay. I could still show compassion, and we can still figure things out together and hopefully come to more middle grounds in our country where I feel like he listened to me and he feels like I listened to him, and we're trying to figure things out together.
Powerful stuff, man. Your reaction when the Seahawks let you go, what was it?
I mean, I was hoping it was going to last a little longer, but I knew it was coming, most likely. I mean, they had a good long snapper there. And to your point, he was like 6'3", 250. And he was 6 years younger than me. I mean, I was the oldest guy on the team, man. I got there at 34. I was the oldest rookie in NFL history in the modern era. And the next oldest guy was the 33-year-old punter, John Ryan. Like, everybody else was super young. So anyway, but I remember the GM, John Schneider, was a great guy, man. And he's been a big supporter of charity stuff I've been working on since then. But he's walking down the hall towards me, and he had this look on his face like, man, I got some bad news here, And I knew what he was going to say. I mean, before he even said it, he walked up, he's like, Nate, I'm like, it's all good, man. Don't worry about it. And he was like, sorry. And I'm like, dude, it's business. He's like, I was like, you took a chance on me. I appreciate it. He took me up to Pete's office, and, we sat down there and chatted for a bit. Nah, it was good, man. Like, it was all good. I could tell it was like their dog had died, they had it was such a sad day. And, but it was more about like what what they felt like I was bringing to the locker room, not the field. And I get that. So, but it was all good. I was grateful for the opportunity.
Man, well, I don't feel like you've missed a beat since being done with football. Are you done? Are you officially retired?
You know what? The Dallas Renegades, the XFL team, asked me to play this year, and I weigh about 177 pounds right now. I did get back into long snapping a bit, and was considering it. I was gonna maybe play if it was for the LA team because that was local. I got some TV stuff going on out there. But it didn't happen. And I think the season just got canceled, I think, because of all this coronavirus stuff. So
yeah, man, I think it did. I want to give you the floor to talk about the project that you have going on right now, and there's no shortage of them. You have, let's see, the Trinidad 3 Jeans partnership. You have you got into film after all, and you're producing your first feature length film, which is incredible. And then you're also doing some writing. Go ahead and hit it.
Yeah. So Trinidad 3, this is it right here. Trinidad 3 Jeans. Trinidad is a Marine buddy of mine. He was in 2-7, which is a battalion that hit pretty much the hardest in Iraq and Afghanistan on back-to-back deployments in 08 and 09. I think they lost 29 guys. And sadly, they've lost roughly 45 to suicide since then out of one battalion, which is like unheard of. Well, a lot of these guys have kind of banded together in the Los Angeles area. And they were stationed out at 29 Palms, which isn't far from there. They've banded together out there, and through our charity MVP that I started with Jay Glazer, which stands for Merging Vets and Players, these guys have sort of come out of the woodwork and started working together again and like building themselves back up and finding new purpose. Well, Trinidad, he went to fashion school after the Marine Corps, and he went to FITM, which is super weird. And he was like in his late 30s. Imagine that. Talk about going back to college, fish out of water thing. Like, he's out there because he loves denim, and he wants to make the greatest jean known to man. So he's out there doing that, hyper focused on it. And as things have developed, we partnered up recently because we have that same mission and concept of like repurposing materials, but also repurposing people, and like, that's all we want to be as veterans, like repurposed in some way. And, for him to find that love again and something that he really has that same passion for, like he did in the Marine Corps, it's inspiring, man. It's tough business. It's very challenging, but it's super cool. So yeah, Trinidad 3 Jeans, check it out. It's incredible stuff. It's all made in America. Everything is made in Los Angeles, which is very rare, very, very rare these days. And it's the best stuff you can buy. It's really, really high quality stuff. And then the movie. So produced my first feature film. We're in post-production right now. Man, we did this thing on a shoestring budget out in Massachusetts over the winter, pretty much right after Christmas until late January. And a lot of veterans involved in that as well, both in front of and behind the camera. It's a thriller called The Secret of Cinchony. And in movie money, like, we made this, like, it's insane. And we made it for the low 6 figures, the lowest 6 figure you can imagine. So like, it's but to me it looks like a $1 million movie or more, and I can't wait for that to come out. And then
when's the release?
Yeah, we don't know yet. We're going to submit to film festivals. We're going to submit to film festivals first. So I think our first goal is to submitting to Toronto Film Festival, which I believe is in September. And so then we'll just kind of go down the line. I would love it to be at South by Southwest because it's back in Austin, or Sundance. I've been to Sundance before. That's great. And then lastly, I partnered on this book. It's called Deliberate Discomfort. It's actually written by one of my commanders in the Special Forces, Jason Van Camp. But a bunch of us who served, a couple of these guys are Medal of Honor recipients. We did this book called Deliberate Discomfort. And basically, it's talking about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. We talk about our experiences in the military, our experiences since then, but how some of the most successful people, successful leaders, successful warriors were ones that like leaned into that awkwardness, leaned into the tough times. You know what I mean? And we're not afraid to fail. Like, maybe even they were afraid to fail, but they were so afraid to fail, they wouldn't let it happen. You know what I mean? And, so it's a really cool compilation of like all these people's experiences and how it relates to, whether you're a business owner or you work, or you want to be a business owner, or you're an athlete. There's just a ton of connections there. So Deliberate Discomfort's the book. Check that one out as well. Sorry, I just crammed all that stuff in your face.
I love it.
I love it. And then you mentioned merging veterans and players. How can people learn more?
Yeah, vetsandplayers.org is the website. MVP I co-founded it with Jay Glazer, and we're bringing together combat vets and former professional athletes and helping them find purpose, community, service, just that brotherhood, locker room, and team that they miss, and finding that self-worth again, or understanding that you're not the uniform you wore. That was like who you may be identified with, but that's not who you are. Who you are is the person that beat out so many other people to get to that level and sacrifice so much to get to that level. You're still that person. So you can start on that new venture in life, whatever it is. Maybe it's being a great father, Andrew. I don't know. You can do that using those same skills you developed, to be a great long snapper, to be a great student, to be a great guy. So that's really all it's about. And we have chapters all over the country. We just opened our New York chapter. Nashville will be there soon. And we meet up every week in the gym and we train for about 45 minutes. And then for the next 45 minutes, we hang out on the wrestling mats and we just talk, man. It's an open forum. People can talk about anything. We encourage vulnerability and if you're struggling with something, like, get it out there, because someone else in that room has been through something similar, and we'll talk through it. We'll figure it out, and then from there we build these communities of people that go out and do service projects, but also are just there for one another, so you don't feel alone. Because I'm sure guys that you've played with at some level, and like the isolation thing's a big issue. You get done and like you don't know who you are anymore, and you kind of run from it because it's scary. And guys in the military do it as well, and girls. And it's like it's just not a good place to be, man. We're pack animals, We're supposed to be part of a herd and a tribe, and we just need to maintain that.
It is. It's so hard to make the transition out of athletics, no matter what level. I can't imagine how much more intense that difficulty of transition is.
I imagine your wife it had to be like crazy, because like that's from such a young age that's who you are,
That's it. Yeah. I would think she would probably just say, let's see, she retired when she was 20, and I think it probably took her 6 years fully to like feel confident in the next thing. I do have a question. You kind of alluded to it earlier, but a lot of football players make the comparison of, hey, we're going to battle together. You've done both, playing football and gone to battle. Is that comparison frustrating ever for you?
No, because I think people that say it, I would think they understand, it's not like lives aren't at stake. Like, the stakes are very different, right? But the mentality to be successful, it has to be similar. It does. I can't imagine going in a cage, like in an octagon as a UFC fighter, like a sport like that, you know what I mean? And football is a very brutal sport, but like, just, with that, you have to have a mentality of just like, I'm going to war in a sense, you know what I mean? And I'm like, my life is on the line. Like, you have to feel those things. You have to feel that way at a level. I think with young kids, it's probably a little bit dangerous, you know what I mean, for coaches to act like that. But the level of preparation and how seriously you have to take it, and training at a high level. You have to have that similar mentality. You really do. And then that, like we talked about several times on this, like the brotherhood and the bonds, and fighting for each other. All those things are essential to successful teams. Like, you have to have that, or you don't win. That's why the Seahawks were so good, I think, because when you looked at that team, who all those guys have become superstars now, and a lot of them are on different teams because they couldn't afford to keep them all. But a lot of those guys were not high draft picks, chip on their shoulder type guys. That's the type of guys Pete Carroll liked to have on the team. And they just fed off one another, man. You go to practice and there's this energy level that I haven't noticed anywhere else. Like, I've been to, I've been to training camp with other teams and seen stuff, and it's just different. It's just different there. And it was just a group of guys that were pushing each other to be better all the time. And that's the same. It goes the same way in the military. The best units are ones like that have that, that live and die for one another mentality. I'll do anything for this guy, even if I don't like him.
Yeah, man. We're I'm taking up a lot of your time. I'm glad I caught you on quarantine, or else you probably have something to do. But we'll close out. I'm curious to hear what your goals are now, Nate.
Man, I want to have my own production company when it comes to personal goals and at a professional level. I want to make my own content, make my own movies. I do want to direct a film. That's kind of my next goal. Yeah, just keep moving forward in that regard. But also with MVP, man, I want to have that charity be everywhere. I want to have chapters all over the country. That's a big goal for that. And I just want to continue to empower people to be great. I mean, we all are capable of it. We all have a story. We've all been through tough stuff. And we're all able, so like, don't let anything get in your way, because the number one thing that gets in your way is yourself. I know that from personal experience, and the roommates in your head. That's what stops us from being great. Because without obstacles, there is no greatness. And you need those obstacles. So there's no excuse there.
Wow. I feel kind of silly asking this question, because I feel like this whole episode has been just packed full of lessons, but 3 pieces of advice that you would give the audience. I know you just gave one.
I've said this before, and I think it's super important. And it can relate to a lot of different things, but I think it especially relates to if somebody asks you the question, like, what do you want, or what do you want to do? And I think the three really important things for me to remember is to be very clear about what that thing is, be specific, and be honest. Be brutally honest. You know what I mean? I've seen it a lot in the professional world, as far as like the film and TV world, right? Where, a young person comes in, a lot of accolades, well-educated, super smart, super creative, ultra capable. And someone asks them what they want to do, and they know the answer to the question, and they're afraid to like put it out there, because maybe it'll sound a little audacious or stupid, or like, they're afraid the person will be like, you're crazy. It's going to take you 15 years to get to that level. You have to do this, this, this. But it's like, no, be clear, be specific, and be honest about who you are, or who you want to be, or what you want to do. And then people can help you. Otherwise, they don't know how to help you. If you're like, well, I'm kind of interested in this, but this is cool, and I just don't know. And the answer to that too is, if you don't know right now, then try things. Get out there and try all those things that you're interested in, and you'll find things that stick. Don't just join the military, because then you're stuck. But whatever you're interested in, go seek it out, go check it out, give it a try, and you never know.
Thankful that you gave us the time here today. It's so cool that you have not only had the courage to engage in the conversations that you've chosen to engage in, which takes courage, because it's not easy. You're going to catch slack from both sides. And you've just been such a fantastic figurehead. I think a great example of how, again, to have empathy and really like engage in conversation with people of a different mindset, and all your accomplishments, well earned. I appreciate you giving us the time and all the wisdom as well.
I'm sure they will. Thank you, Andrew. And I've been following you guys and your family and everything, and really proud of you guys. And